Hi, I'm Maeva, and I created Raising with the Village to share real stories from real parents. The kind that remind us that we're not alone in this wide and beautiful journey of raising children. Because every story shared can make someone else feel seen and supported. Sometimes life doesn't follow the timeline we imagined. Louisa married in her early 30s, and like many of us, she thought that she would start a family when she felt ready. But what does ready even mean? Years went by, work, travel, life. And when she finally felt that the time might be right, there was no rush. Until there suddenly was. What started as quiet patience slowly turned into waiting, wondering, and finally seeking answers through IVF. In today's episode, we talk about the invisible timeline so many women feel, the pressure of the right time, and what happens when that moment doesn't unfold as planned. Let's listen to how Louisa's story unfolds, a story about waiting, courage, and rediscovering what it really means to be ready. Let's get into it. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, Maeva. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold, so apologies for the sniffles, but otherwise, really good.
No, I think that gives you a very good voice. It's like the rocky, sexy voice, whatever. I think that works really well.
My goal in life.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, shall we start with quick introductions? Who are you?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Louisa. I'm 45. I'm originally from the US, and I moved to the UK close to 20 years ago. I'm currently 21 weeks pregnant.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. But I have a 2.5-year-old, and I had him at 43.
Fantastic. Congratulations. And so that's going to be today's story.
Yes.
Let's start at the very beginning, before the pregnancy started. Can you tell me, where were you in your life? What was the situation?
I got married at 31, and I had loads of questions after you get married. When are you going to have kids? Are you going to have kids yet? You're not getting any younger. Tons of that. I always knew I wanted to be a mom, but I never felt ready. I was waiting for the stars to align, some light to go off to be like, now's the time. And that kind of never came, and the years went on. I started telling people, including my family, that no, I don't want kids, because I was just tired of giving them reasons why I hadn't, because it was very difficult to explain. I was very career focused. I'd moved over for work. I had wanted to reach a certain point in my career before I plateaued, hoping for early retirement, all of that thing. And I think also living away from my family, always in the back of my mind of support. How am I going to do this? I'm the eldest of four. I've always been the caretaker of the family, and I've always had, I think, difficulty receiving or getting help. So it was always knowing that there would be challenges. I would need help, but who was going to help me? I had my partner. He's an only child, so he doesn't have loads of experience with children. So that was kind of what was going on in life.
And so for your partner, where is he from? Because obviously you said that you're from the US, so family is far away. What about him?
He's from the UK. He grew up near the coast. He's an only child. His mom's an only child. Like, there's not many children around. And it was,
wow.
It was also in the back of my head, like, if we don't have kids, this is the end of your lineage.
Big pressure.
I know. He didn't seem to be that bothered, which was also like a part of the hesitancy. Like, do you want kids, or do you want kids just because I want kids? And that took some time to figure out for him to come around and be like, no, actually, I really do want kids. That was really reassuring to hear, because I was like, maybe this is our life. Like, this is our life together, where we can travel and do all this stuff, and kids aren't in the picture. So that was a bit of it. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I would like to be a mom. I would like to have a small family of my own. So there was a lot of that back and forth for many years.
Yeah, wow. And yeah, I guess obviously with, social pressure and obviously, everything that goes with that. And what about his parents? Were his parents like did they raise any concerns or questions, or what were they thinking, considering that he's an only child, that his mum is an only child
Yeah.
as well? Did they have anything to say about that or questions throughout the years?
The pressure didn't come so much from his family, it was more my family. Hi it in Later on, it came out that his parents did really want a grandchild, but they would, like, subtly ask, like, "Oh, what are you thinking?" And I gave them this spiel, like, I'm not sure we'll have kids. Leave me alone, don't ask me any more questions." So it was always like, "I don't know. I'm not sure that's on the cards for us." The pressure was really from my family. That was where, it was constant and no filter. "You're not getting any younger. You're really not gonna have kids? Like, well, what are you doing in life?" So that was where a lot of it came, and then from some of my friends as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now let's move forward to that point when you do decide actually that you want to try for a child. So, do you remember how old you were at that point?
I think I was about, it was before I was 38. We we got on the same page that we both want, children, but we didn't do a lot about it. We kind of monitored ovulation cycles a little bit, but uh, you know, um, weren't really taking it seriously. It was only, I think it was 38, 39, when it started hitting home, like things will change, physiologically. I started looking at different IVF clinics to get tested, like they do I think it's like fertility MOT for couples, to get things checked and to at least find out what the lay of the land is, to at least know what you were dealing with, which felt a little less scary of like, let's have kids now. So that was kind of what got the ball rolling. And from those checks, I went to a couple clinics. One of them I really did not like. They were like, at 40, you fall off a cliff. Things dramatically change. Your egg reserves fall off. Materially, there's higher risk of abnormalities, all of which I'm sure are somewhat accurate, but it was the hard push that really turned me off. But some of that did resonate. So this big 40 number was in my head.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that at some point you're sort of thinking, right, I'm getting closer to 40. And this is what you hear everywhere. It's, when you get closer to 40, your, I don't know, egg count diminishes or things like that. That's what you start hearing about. Okay, so you approached some IVF clinics. What happened after that? Is that where you things sort of started for you?
It was still a very slow, slow process, Maba. It was get the MOT check. Everything kind of checked out. So like, we don't really see a reason why there's an issue. And we kind of let that marinate for a bit. We were moving very slow. We started ovulation tracking again. One of the clinics noticed that I had fibroids, which they thought could be impacting the ability to get pregnant. And they're like, you can do nothing, or you can have some procedures, some surgery to get them removed. So we decided to go for the latter. It took a couple of goes, so that took some time. And I think also we had decided that with the big 40 number in the background, and at that time I was over 40, that we would freeze some eggs or embryos, um, so that I always had that option. And you kind of freeze time, in, in a sense. So going through that process also took some time.
Yeah. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about that process? Because as I understand it, it's actually it's not, it's not just you decide one day that you freeze your eggs. It's actually a whole protocol in itself. So do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a lengthy process. You have to find a clinic, a doctor that you like. They'll take you through the usual plan, but it's highly tailored to your cycle. There were a lot of choices to make. Are you freezing eggs? Are you freezing embryos? Are you going to get them tested? Um, are you going to freeze them, or are you going to go straight to transfer? So there was a lot to learn. It was a crash course in in IVF, and a lot of life altering decisions to make. So we had decided we were going to um, freeze some embryos, and potentially do a transfer after. I went through first cycle. I don't have an issue with needles. There were a lot of injections. And after the first cycle, I opted to have the embryos tested. I had loads of eggs, but at the end of it, there was only one viable embryo, and that was such a wake-up call. I think there were 4 in total, but only one was viable. The others had abnormalities. And knowing friends that had gone through IVF where there is a high chance of miscarriage, it was, do I go with the one, or when I think I was 41 or 42, like 41, do I go for another cycle and have more reserves at 41 than at 43 or something like that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. And okay, so I've had so many questions come through through my mind when you were talking. Obviously, I was thinking first needles. Yes, that's a big thing because, as I understand it, you've got to. It's something that you've got to do on a daily basis for a period of time ahead of your cycle.
Yeah.
You've got to be very strict when it comes to time and all of that. Were you doing it all by yourself? Was your partner helping you with that?
My partner's terrified of needles. So, I did them by myself. They were It was not too bad, in the beginning. The needles were quite thin. It just, it became a part of a routine. I think towards the end, it got a little bit tedious. There were patches, there were pessiaries. I was like, "Well, what do I do with pessiary?" I've never, so that was a whole experience. So I think the first time around, the needles were okay. After the one embryo, we decided to do another round to have more, so that we increased our chances. I think once you start going on that journey, you start to realize, actually, yes, I really do want to be a mom. This is what I want. Everything started kind of coming together, and I think it's a wake up call that um you may never feel fully ready. The stars are not all gonna align, but there was enough there, where we've started the work. Like, should we keep going? And we really aren't getting any younger. You already start to notice, like, if you're stepping down or you're jumping down from a step, you're now a lot more cautious than maybe a few years ago. And I was like, I don't even know when that changed. So it was all of that realization. And I think there were enough boxes ticked. Our marriage was stable. We were financially stable. Work was okay. I don't know what else there was that I was waiting for. But it was the second time where I think the needles mentally got to me. I felt like my skin was rejecting it. It just felt harder to do. And it was back to back. So I was pretty over that. So it was the second time that mentally, it started bothering me.
It is a lot of injections.
Yeah.
Um, at that point, actually, I forgot to ask, but did you share with anyone, friends, close family, his family? Did you share that you were starting this IVF cycle or cycles?
Um, it was only my brother and then later my sister. There It's almost like group therapy. We speak to each other quite a lot, and it's in recent years we got a lot closer. So it was only them, because they're my siblings, so I can tell them, "Don't ask me anymore. Go away." I didn't tell any of my friends. I think having moved over here, a lot of my friends are friends that I had worked with, my boss, things like that. So it made it a little bit more complicated, and I didn't want to open the door of questions. So are you going to have a baby right away? I don't know. And it felt quite personal to share, and I wasn't ready because I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. In my mind, it was knowing that I was over 40. You read all the articles that it's high risk. A lot of things can happen. So I was quite reserved about sharing at that time. I think now I'm a lot more open to it. I think my mindset shift where I do think it is something we need to talk about more, so that people can educate themselves. And I kind of, yeah, I think in the beginning it wasn't something hugely spoken about. I didn't feel as comfortable sharing, not knowing what the outcome was going to be. So it was mainly my siblings that I would have those daily conversations with. Like, I did something, I'm all bruised. It looked like someone beat up my stomach, and things like that.
Yeah, that's a question that I was going to ask later on, but is that something you wish you would have heard about sooner? And when I say something, I mean the IVF, the injections that come with it, all of the regularity, the cycles, the pressure, and not just the social pressure, but then the pressure that you kind of inflict on yourself at that point when you're like, do you know what? I do want to have a child. But now this is what it looks like. Is this something that you wish you had heard a little bit earlier on?
Yes, I mean, I think having that network, and whether it's people that are very present in your life or not, just sharing experiences and stupid questions, right? Like, what did I do where sometimes it's bruised and sometimes it doesn't? Like, I don't know. Or like I mentioned before about pessiers, it's not really a topic you bring up with loads of people, but like, challenges that you might have with that, or are there alternatives? It's similar. I think now, being 45, I'm doing a lot more research on like menopause and asking a lot more questions, and just hearing those women and how different that experience is. And I think the same for IVF. Everyone has a different experience. There's different clinics, different doctors, different medical terms. Like, if you don't have that background, like you don't know. You're trying to arm yourself with as much information as you can. So I think having someone there to kind of go through that with you, who's going through the same journey. My partner was with me. It just felt a little bit different. He wasn't the one that like had to inject himself all the time. So although he was very supportive and he was there, I felt like it was a little bit of a different experience on the receiving end of it.
Yeah, I heard something yesterday. Someone was saying that when it comes to pregnancy, but I think also ultimately being a parent, it feels a bit like signing up for a marathon with your partner, except that you're the only one actually running the race.
I love that. Yeah.
So, there we go. Okay, cool. So, let's go back then to our timeline. So, you just found out that you had one embryo, and actually, sorry, just for clarification, maybe for some of the listeners, could we clarify the difference between an egg and an embryo, and maybe if you remember how many days your embryo was, if you remember.
Uh, yes. It was a day 5 embryo. So you can freeze your you can freeze your eggs, um, uh, um, or you can freeze embryos, which means it's inseminated. That's your baby. And there's a higher chance of success with embryos. So depending on whatever your situation is in life, you may choose one or the other. I'd already been married for quite some time. You also have to sign a lot of legal paperwork, like what happens, because they're there. So if your relationship breaks down, what is the agreement of who has rights, like who can make the decisions? So there was a lot of that type of paperwork that we hadn't discussed. It was only when filling out the form I was like, "Oh, do you feel comfortable doing this?" It was a wake up call because that is not the feeling that you have right now, right? The feeling that you have is like, we're going to create a family together, and then all of a sudden you have to fill out these forms of like, if things break down, what is going to happen? It's like doing your will, or like like if Armageddon happened, what would you do?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you go from, oh, we're going to be a family, we're going to be happy, to, well, okay, what happens if you get a divorce? Okay, well, I'm going to look after the embryos from Mondays to Thursdays, and then you're going to take the. Or,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, sorry. Enough being silly. So sorry. So going back to the question, so I was saying the difference between an egg and an embryo. So an egg is before insemination, so it still needs to happen after that. You can freeze them at that point. Or an embryo is essentially the very beginning of what could become a baby.
Yeah.
And for you, congratulations, because you went all the way to day 5, which, in my understanding, are the super champions of the embryos when you get to day 5.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think originally I had 17 eggs. So I was like, "Oh, great. I'm all set." But actually, yeah, only by day 5 there were only 4. And I think some of them went to 6 or 7. And then after genetic testing, only 1 was viable. So it was, as I said before, it was a huge wake up call of um what was the scaremongering before of like once you hit 40, like I think this is what they were trying to get at. But I think there still were different ways to go about it. But I think that was kind of the science that backed that. It was the trying to relay that scientifically, your chances of success are dramatically increased. And I think that's why you see a lot of women over 40 having miscarriages. I think going through the IVF process, you kind of see that. I think for women who naturally fall pregnant, like you can kind of understand how that might happen in terms of the odds.
Yeah, definitely. All of a sudden, you can see behind the curtain. Okay, so going back, you have that one embryo, one healthy day 5 embryo, and I think you hinted on the fact that you went through another cycle.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes. So I think when we were told it was 1 out of 4, you're like, "Oh my gosh." And then keeping in mind, I think once they're tested, there's a higher rate that it will be successful, but there's still a risk that it's not. And it was deciding, okay, do we go for another round? Can we afford it? Can I mentally go through it again so that we have a few more embryos before I get older? How many kids do we want? And things like that. So it was some discussion, and we decided that we would try another cycle. We were in it. I wanted more than one child. I have 3 siblings. I wanted my child to have that experience. Oh, I wanted to get there, and then I wanted my child to have the opportunity of that in the future.
So you go through that second cycle. What are the results?
That one yielded 3 successful embryos, so I had 4. Yeah.
Ooh.
And I think they were a mix. I think it was like day 5. day 6. I think they were day 5 and day 6 embryos.
Okay, so super successful then. So at this point, then you've got a pool of 4 embryos.
Yes.
And is that the time when you decide to actually go ahead with transfer?
Yes. So I think I waited a little while. And we asked about the process. There were more drugs that you had to take. You
Needle time.
Yeah, you need to constantly monitor your cycle. So we waited a little bit. We got in touch with them to say, okay, we're ready to start the process. It was at that time that we had made an appointment to go in, to start everything. We had a date for the transfer. We went away on holiday, and then we ended up naturally getting pregnant. So we actually didn't go through with the transfer.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, I did not
After all that. Yeah.
After all that, I didn't expect that. Yeah, actually, I didn't even think about asking about that.
Yeah.
But that is so fantastic. I mean, such a great outcome.
Yeah. I think it's actually quite common. I actually met another mom who was on maternity leave that had the same experience. It was so odd. We were both later in life, or not later, not like we're that old. We were both over 40.
We were 90.
We were 97. No, we were both over 40, and it was same. It was such a bonding experience. And with my second, the one I'm pregnant with now, they kept asking me, like, are you sure you like, before the transfer, are you sure there's no chance that you'd be pregnant? I was like, no. And then afterwards, after the transfer, they're like, we need to scan you again to make sure there's only one. I was like, but you only put one in. And apparently it's really common for people, like, you transfer one, but then they naturally fall pregnant and you end up with 2 pregnancies. And this was from the clinic, but then also from my NHS appointments. They're like, okay, we just need to scan to make sure there's one baby. In my head, I was like, oh my gosh, what if there's 2? But yeah, it's apparently very common.
Okay, I thought for a second here you were going to make an announcement like, ta-da! It's actually triplets.
Oh my word! Could you imagine?
Okay, so so going back to that first pregnancy of a singleton, so in the end you actually get pregnant naturally.
Yes.
Congratulations, fantastic. At this point, what does that mean? Do you still have to see? Because in, let's say, a traditional pregnancy, in the first few weeks, there's actually not that much happening. You don't really see any medical professionals. You don't really do any testing. With your situation, was it any different? What happened at the beginning of that pregnancy?
I was still under care of the IVF clinic. I don't know if it was mandatory, but at that time, you kind of went with it. So they asked to see me to do a scan to confirm. So this was quite early on. And then they referred me to a specialty clinic to get a more thorough scan. And I don't know if it was like a revenue generating thing, but I wanted that security. So we went. I think it's called the Fetal Medicine Center in London. It was pricey, but we were like, look, like we want to know. I think I was 6 weeks pregnant at that time. They did quite a thorough scan. They did mention something in the scan with the umbilical cord, but they said it was early days. It's probably going to be nothing. So I didn't think much of it because she was so reassured. She was like, it's early days, wait for the fetus to get bigger. And then you will have a more thorough anatomy scan. I'm sure it's nothing, but I wanted to mention it because I saw something. We did a a blood test where they test, even though this was natural. We did a blood test to check for the three major chromosomal abnormalities. So that was all done early on. Yeah, 6 weeks.
Well, yeah, that's super early on because I think with the NHS they don't really do anything until, oh, I'm going to say something wrong probably here, but I think it's more around 10 weeks, something like that, or
Yeah.
8 weeks.
Yes, it's a little bit
It's
later.
a little bit later, yeah.
Yeah.
So at this point, that's 6 weeks in. What happens after the 6 weeks? Do you get back into the NHS, or did you also have in parallel a private follow-up as well?
No, I think maybe there was one more follow-up with the IVF clinic. But we were keen to move to NHS because it was quite an expensive every appointment, and they're like 15 minutes. So you're like, okay, probably don't need to see you anymore. I didn't know what to do, to be honest. I It's very different from the US. So I was looking online. I think this is where I think I had one friend that lived locally that had children. So I was like, what do you do? It's like, oh, you like contact your GP, and then you need to think about what hospital. And I was like, well, I've not been to any hospitals in this country. Like, I've no idea. So you start looking online, um uh so I phoned the GP, and they're like, where would you like to have your, I was like, child, I was like, I don't know. I didn't know how often you had to go, what questions do you ask, all of that kind of stuff. So I started looking at like what hospitals are near me, because I didn't really know.
Was it a criteria at all, either that you thought about or that maybe the GP suggested, like a strong NICU reputation or something like that?
Mhm.
Was that a recommendation from someone at any point?
I didn't know anything at that time, Ava. Like, I put the little thing the lady mentioned to the back of my mind. We were so happy. We were pregnant. It was, she's like, it's probably nothing. Like, it was one of those comments. So that was kind of forgotten until, like, you got in the system and had the scans. So that was put to the back of my mind. It was really looking at, I think, what most women would initially look at, like, what's the experience that others have had? What's the care like? How far is it? My friend did mention that given age, there was a high chance that you'll probably need to be induced. And it was like, oh, do you know if you want a C-section or a natural, or all this kind of stuff? I was like, I have no idea. So I think the GP didn't offer any advice or suggestions. It was like, okay, what are your details? Which hospital do you want? Here's the list of some that you can choose. And that was it. There was no like, think about this, think about, no, it was very factual. It was through my local friend, which didn't have that many because I worked a lot, and looking online to get different people's experiences. So I decided on the hospital. I called back the GP, booked in, and then that was kind of the start. There was no, I probably didn't do as extensive a research. It was primarily based off of feedback that I read online from different people's experiences, and then you kind of have to weed out the extremes to try to get to what you think is the average experience.
So at this point, you made your decision, you choose your hospital. Second trimester, anything to mention at that point? Did you get, so obviously now you're looking like a Christmas tree. You've got all your oranges and your reds and or maybe they're not saying red, they're
Yeah,
just saying very bright amber, or whatever it is that they
yeah,
call it, with your little frame to walk around the hospital.
yeah.
Second trimester, anything? Did you have any extra scans, any extra tests, anything they were looking into at this point that you think was related to your age?
Um, I think you saw consultants, which I'm not sure everybody sees. I didn't see them that often. It was like once, twice. At that at that time, I think maybe it was once where they booked in a consultant appointment. You have to take aspirin, which I think not everybody takes. It wasn't until the anomaly scan where I had forgotten this whole time up to then about the comment that the lady made in the 6-week scan that she saw something, but it was probably nothing. It was at the anomaly scan where she didn't say, like, the sonographer didn't say anything during the scan. But she had me wait, and she had me go to this other area and wait some more after the scan. And I was like, what am I waiting for? And I was waiting for, I think, a specialist midwife to come to tell me that they found an anomaly. And they were saying that I'm going to get this scientifically like wrong, or medically wrong, but basically a lot of your organs grow, I think, from the umbilical cord, and then your abdomen closes. And with my baby, the abdomen didn't close, and it's called Exomphalos, or also called a Omphalocele. I had no idea what this was, and it was this my fault because I waited so late to have a kid? What did I do? What does this mean? Is my baby at risk? So all of that started coming. And it was only then that they offered me the test for the chromosomal abnormalities. Even though I had already had it at 6 weeks, I was like, I'm just going to do it again, because now when you have an Exomphalos baby, there's higher risk of other abnormalities. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have that test again. What now? The hospital that I was at had a NICU, but it was I think it's like what's a level 1, like I guess it's not as a- advanced, I guess. So I was referred to a hospital farther away for additional scans, and that had a level 3 NICU and specialist units and stuff. So I was under the care of kind of 2 hospitals. So then it became double appointments. They were not great at speaking to each other, but I was kind of okay because my first pregnancy, my baby didn't move that much, and with this extra complications, I just constantly needed that reassurance. So it was great in that sense, in that I probably had a lot more scans than most people did.
Okay, and so what came out of that anomaly scan? So you said that obviously there had been that comment very early on in the pregnancy. Now you are being followed up by 2 different hospitals. What does that mean? Were they starting to prepare you for delivery, for after the birth? What happens at this point?
I got referred to a specialist unit where they did a more thorough scan, and I didn't know what to expect. After the scan, the doctor came in and said, yes, it's confirmed. Your baby has an exomphalos. There's a higher risk of other abnormalities, but you've done the blood test. You can do a CVS test. So you could have like a amnio. I'm gonna get it wrong. You can basically they put a giant needle in your tummy, and they take samples. And I think one is of amniotic fluid and one might be of the placenta. I can't remember. But they were two different tests to get a better picture of what the DNA is, and are there further abnormalities. And he also said you also have the option to terminate. That really hit me. So there was a lot of questions on what would life look like? What's the survival rate? And then you go home and you Google everything. You read everything that you can to try to make the most informed decision. They tell you not to, but you're just naturally.
I was going to say, Google is not your friend at this point. It really isn't.
It wasn't, but for me, I felt like it was. Like, I think I was approaching it like work. I was really trying to take the emotion out of it and try to make the best decision for us. And I think you have all the statistics, but you also want to hear about other people's experiences. What was the rest of pregnancy like? What was raising a child like? What's the life expectancy? And you want to hear real life examples. And that was where uh, I don't know what people did before the internet, because you have the doctors that give you the medical facts, but like, it's really hard to find a support network that's gone through what you're going through. Um, it's not that common. So there was no one that I knew that had gone through this. And no one that could answer my million questions of like what to expect. Are the doctors telling me, is my doctor telling me what you've heard? Are they extreme? Like, we've all seen doctors that are too aggressive or not aggressive, very passive. So like, do I stick with this, or do I find another doctor and get another opinion? Or, like that kind of thing I felt quite helpful and reassuring, and kind of getting advice from like the weirdest places, like Facebook support groups and things, were my savior during that time.
So you found yourself a community online then?
Yes, there were quite a few different groups and charities, um, uh, like adults that grew up having exomphalosis, people who were repaired, not repaired, like all different things. So just know, like sharing their experiences, and so that you know what questions to ask as well before your next appointment, and so that you can mentally prepare.
And just for the listeners to better understand, what does that mean at this point? What were they telling you if you just tell us in plain English, not medical terms, but in plain English, what were they telling you that your baby may have at birth? What did it mean?
So basically, he had what uh it's kind of like a hernia. Like, so a hernia where your tummy is, where it didn't close properly. So and his some of his guts, like his stomach or bowel or liver, was outside of his abdomen in this sac. And then there's different forms of it. So some of it is in a sac, some is not. His was in a sac, and they can't really tell you what's inside. And depending on what's inside, is it a small one, is it a major exomphalos? Like with my son, it was major exomphalos, because it was bowel and some of his liver. So he's what they told me was high chance of other chromosomal abnormalities. So that's why I opted for the CVS test. That thank God came back all fine. So but it doesn't test for everything. It doesn't test for every abnormality. So there were other chances of other things that could happen, but the major ones were okay. And even with the major ones, there are people that go through life with these different syndromes. So I was like, I'm gonna have this baby. Like, this is what I was meant to go through. I felt that we weeded out enough that his quality of life would have been okay. There were other chances of other syndromes that I had no idea existed that you could live with and go through life with. So it was that he could potentially be born with other syndromes that you would have to work with professionals to manage and treat. He would likely have to have surgeries after to kind of like push everything back in. But that may not be when he's young. It could be when he's older, depending on how big it is, how much skin, how much muscle, how he heals, high chance of infection. Yeah, that was kind of what was said. And there was, if there were no other abnormalities, he would likely go on to lead a relatively normal life. So that was kind of what you hold on to, but then in the back of your head kind of prepare for like whatever's lurking behind the next corner. And you're like, well, I felt quite mentally strong at that time to like, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to, whatever comes, like we will deal with it. I felt very weirdly pragmatic at that time. I think because it was so much, I went into, I don't know, big sister carer mode, where I was like, okay, well, tell me what the options are. Tell me why. Like, it was very, uh, very clear cut, in that sense. Didn't make the decisions easier, but I felt logically like I think after the initial shock, I didn't feel overwhelmed where I felt like I didn't know what to do.
A good way to filter through the noise, I guess.
Yeah, I think thinking back, I don't think I felt like I had any other choice. No one was going to make the decision for me. People can give you advice, but it's not you. Like you can listen, but you make that choice. So it was either like crumble on the floor and be like, I don't know what to do. Or try to like pull myself together and make the best decision that I can. My husband was trying to support me in every way that he could, but he never gone through this. He didn't know what to do. He was used to me being the strong-headed one. And he was like, whatever you want to do. And that was quite frustrating actually, because I was like, it's not just what I want to do. This is our life. So yeah, so at some points I felt quite alone, and that online community really, really helped me through that.
That's where we'll pause for today. What a journey it's been so far. Louisa's story really shows how quickly things can change. One moment you're filled with excitement and plans, and the next you're faced with questions you never thought you'd have to answer. As she comes to terms with the news that her unborn baby may have medical complications, she's suddenly standing at a crossroads, unsure what to do next or where to turn. Next week, in part 2, we'll find out what happened next for Louisa and her baby, and how she navigated those incredibly difficult days. Make sure you're subscribed to Raising with the Village on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcast, Deezer, or wherever you listen, so that you don't miss the continuation of her story. And if you've got your own experience to share about pregnancy, parenthood, or anything else, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me through the website raisingwith.co.uk or on Instagram at raisingwiththevillage. Until then, take good care, and I'll see you next Thursday. Bye-bye.